Hi everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and I'm here to bring you another update on our V4R Superbike project. So as you can see, we have gotten pretty well into this project and things are coming along pretty nicely. We've got the rear wheel mounted, we've got the Spark exhaust mounted, which I must say looks really nice. We haven't had a chance to hear this yet because we're still in the process of putting everything back together, and then we're going to have to tune the bike. As you can see, there's no controls on there yet, but that's going to be coming soon. We also have our Brake Tech rotor mounted, which looks really nice in there. Got our over suspension mounted. Our drive systems quick change kit is installed, as well as the front sprocket. Got our moto holders, World Superbike spec subframe in place. We have some of our carbon body work installed, and right now we're kind of just mocking everything up. Some of this stuff we had to come up with some special solutions, specifically this exhaust. This subframe completely eliminated the original mounting point for this exhaust system, so we've had to, techs basically just had to build a bracket out of some aluminum stock that we had and make a mounting point in there. So that's something that we've got going for now. And over here you can see that we have one side of our frame protectors on. We have our Superbike radiator system mounted up. Kind of got some controls on the way, but you can still get the idea. And then here we'll show you some of the things that we're going to be installing next. Some of this, we're still waiting on a few things. We're still waiting on our triple clamps. We're still waiting on an axle, rear sets, clip-ons, a few small things that, and some not so small, that we need to get everything mounted up. And that's one reason why we haven't put on a lot of this stuff. We literally have to replace this whole front end. So we're hoping we're going to have that stuff by Friday, and today is Wednesday, I think, and so we're hoping to have all that, and then we can really go crazy and wrap this up, and then really it's just going to be tuning. Anyway, so what I was going to show you is here we have some of the electronic components that we're going to be using. First up, we have these Bike Sport Developments button pods. We really like these because in our experience, not only are these some of the highest quality button switches out on the market, they generally are very specific to the application. It's not something that just fits, it's something that was very thoughtfully engineered. And also they're quite reliable. They never fail. They're really good about being resistant to weather, and you know, they just work, man. That's really what it comes down to. It's a nice kit. This system does require some more advanced control, so there's actually like a special CAN interface is what I believe this is, that allows the switch pod to interface with the stock ECU and electronics. So that does come with these. Here we have a Ducati e-throttle housing. The idea with that is, for one, it's just tidier looking, and two, it's far more robust. So if you crash, you're not going to crush the stock plastic housing and potentially be out of a race. This allows you to have something that's going to let you keep going. Nice touch, as you can see the laser etched our logo into it, which is kind of cool. I think that's really kind of the summary of where we're at right now with this. One thing that's really cool, and we'll show you later, we've got this factory Ducati ride height tool now, so we're able to properly get the bike set up. These, as many of you probably already know, if you do chain adjustment on this, it has a direct impact on the ride height by using this eccentric back here. So the only way to make sure your bike is properly set up is to get this tool that essentially mounts here, here, and here, and it has a way to measure. So we'll mount that up later on and show you what it looks like. This is all still standard for now. We're going to be replacing that shock most likely. Well, we're definitely going to be replacing it, but we may be replacing it before we even ride the bike. And so right now it's all standard, but we'll mount that up and kind of show you how it works. Something else I wanted to show you guys, a set of forks that for now we're going to mount up on this bike and test here. We have a brand new set of these new Ohlins FGR 250 Superbike forks. And what this is designed to be a full-blown Superbike fork that's essentially more affordable than some of the other stuff out there. The World Superbike forks that you've seen us use previously, they're not cheap. You know, they're well over $10,000. This Superbike fork set has an MSRP of only $4,900. Granted, that is not necessarily cheap, but you know, compared to the other stuff, it's certainly less expensive. Now, this is being a Superbike fork, it requires all of the things that you would normally expect, which means you're going to need a different axle. You're probably going to need some inserts, special wheel spacers. You're going to need a set of triple clamps, alternate clip-ons, so on and so forth. But wanted to show you these because we're going to test them on this ZX10RR first. This is another one of our fully built superbike projects that you may have seen on YouTube. We're going to test it there first, and then we're going to also try them on the V4R. We have a set of full-blown World Superbike forks that we're going to be using on the V4R as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these less expensive production forks compare to the full tilt World Superbike spec. So next, I'll go ahead and grab that ride height tool and show you how that works, and you can see how to properly set your ride height even when you're making adjustments here. Okay, so now you can see we've got this tool in place, and you can kind of see how it works. Again, it uses the frame here, the swing arm pivot here, and the rear axle as a way to locate the tool and make sure everything's perfectly lined up and give you these very repeatable results. And then once everything's in place, you can see we have this adapter here. Normally you can basically just remove this adapter and measure from the edge of here to a set point on this, or you can use this entire adapter that goes into the actual hub. And when everything's there, you can see we have the scribe here, and it shows you exactly where you are. So very useful. One thing that we've noticed is compared to what most bikes, well, I'm sure any of you who've seen these on the racetrack, that it seems that the tail is quite high in the air compared to this standard layout. And so it looks like we're going to wind up running the shock quite a bit longer than the standard length, and ours will probably have a similar look after doing so. All right, so actually this was going to be a separate video, but we've gotten our delivery early, and fortunately I'm going to be able to show you some of these awesome parts that we've gotten from Evol Technology, and they're going to be really an integral part of this V4R build. So we'll just get right to it. First up, we have the triple clamp set that we're going to use. This is, you'll notice that we have two upper clamps. The reason for this is that we're going to be using a few different forks. We're actually going to be testing at least 3 forks on this model, and one of them has a different upper clamping diameter. So that's going to be for that fork. The other 2 Ohlins Superbike forks that we're going to be testing, we'll use this set here. This says Superbike. So we've got those, and of course these are fully adjustable offset clamps. We're going to start off with the standard offset. I mean, I think that's the best way to go initially. It's a great way to kind of figure out where you are before you start throwing changes at the bike, just because something might look better on a computer. It's best to just start with what you have and make changes that way. So standard is 30 millimeters, and that's going to be a 0 in this, and that is exactly what we're going to start with. Then we have our tangent tube clip-on set. We use these all the time because they mount sort of not centrally with the fork, but in line with the fork, as opposed to a clip-on tube that goes in front of the fork, like it would be here, for example. You know, I feel they produce a better feel and control with the bike, and especially if you're not a really tall guy, they give you a little more control over how you're positioned on the motorcycle. Along with that, we've got steering damper mount. That's what this is. This is another one. We're going to just see which one we need. Steering stops, which will show you how those work. They just make sure that you're not crashing into stuff. Specifically, that new radiator, we have limited steering angle. This is, of course, Evol Technology's lever guard, which is a really nice piece. It's made out of billet. It's actually got a hinge in case it gets caught on something. It'll release if it's moving that way. And then another thing that we're really excited about is this Rearsets kit. So there's basically 2 essential ways you can go with Rearsets on this bike, and 99.9% of Rearsets are going to be the other way, not this way. And that's essentially that they have this kind of complex way to mount to the stock stuff, and generally it's a more difficult to make piece, and the Rearsets kit is going to be pretty expensive. The other thing is that it's not easy to replace stuff quickly if you crash. On the other hand, this option is what is commonly seen on like World Superbikes, which is where you replace the entire rear set mounting plate with a nice piece of billet. You have full adjustment there, and then you have your rear sets that mount almost in a conventional way to those billet plates. This could improve handling theoretically by, you know, altering stiffness and stuff like that, but the big idea is just that it's a much cleaner and nicer way to do things. On the flip side, this is certainly going to be more expensive because you have far more material involved, so we'll get into that later, but this is the way that we're going to go with that. So next, we're going to start mounting all this stuff up. We'll also show you, well, actually, we can show you for one that we did finish up this Superbike fork installation on the double R. You can see what that looks like. It looks really cool. We've just made some tweaks to the setting in the fork and the oil level and some things that we always like to adjust a bit. And you can see there where we've got all of our brackets and everything made up. So working like a charm now. And then we can show you this front wheel, which really looks great with the BrakeTech Superbike spec rotor, and we've got some tie fasteners on there as well. So next we'll get into installing some of this stuff, and we'll be back at you. Okay, so we just wanted to show you what this looks like before we get everything put together completely. This is that base plate upon which we're going to mount the actual footrest portion of this Evol Rearsets kit. And we opted just to have a little bit of contrast here. This silver kind of nicely suits the engine and some of the other parts here, so we thought it would be a nice way to kind of further accent the V4R. And so essentially this, as you can see, it just slides over the swing arm pivot here, and then there's a pinch bolt on this side, and then you mount just right here using pre-existing mounting points on the factory cases. And of course we've changed these bolts to titanium for weight reduction. On the other side, we've actually already completed the install, you know, obviously aside from the braking side of things and our heel guard, but this is how everything looks once it's come together. And we used a little bit of grease just because specifically on the throttle side, it was a bit of a snug fit getting this over here, which is what we want. And this side actually went down really easily. So, and you can see also he's retained these markings that show swing arm pivot position. So next we'll go ahead and put the footrest portion on, and we're going to start with removing this whole front end and do our triple clamp and fork installation. Okay, so as you can see, Tex has got the front end of the motorcycle essentially completely disassembled. This is the OE V4R fork, and now we're going to prepare to install the Evol SBK triple clamp set and the proper Superbike forks. And here you can see the assembled Rearsets kit on the clutch side. Okay, so we've begun this installation of the triple clamp set with the Superbike fork, and right away we've noticed some issues specifically pertaining to this H2O radiator that we're using, and this cooling area that's on the side. It's presented quite a bit of a clearance issue, namely in that you can see here there's some marks there. This is these bolts were making contact there, and on this side, same thing. You can see, well, I don't know if you can see that, but it was making a pretty good bit of contact there. So what Tex has done is he's essentially just, would you say chamfered that bolt? Beveled, okay. He's beveled this bolt to really clearance it quite a bit, to the point where now we have a substantial amount of clearance compared to before. We were literally crashing into the thing. This is what we're working with now, and you can kind of just see he's basically just ground the edge of that down quite a bit, and without compromising the ability to torque the thing down. And same thing over here. Different angle, but same basic problem, and especially once we put this this damper bracket on here. This side was actually fine prior to using the damper bracket, but that compounded everything. And then here you can see these steering stops. These mount right there into the intake tube or air filter cover, whatever you want to call that. They mount into the bottom of that, and now we've got good contact there. All right, so we'll show you how things are coming along. What we've got now is pretty typical, and something I'd like to just mention. You've probably seen us talk about this in the other Superbike builds, like on the ZX10R or the S1000RR that we did very recently, which is that when doing a project like this, nothing ever just bolts right up, nothing ever just fits right out of the box. We do work to make kits for customers that are interested in doing this kind of project, to where, you know, we do all the hard work and try to produce a turnkey solution. And just like in this instance, we're going to try to make something just like that, so that if anyone ever goes down this road, we'll have stuff that's going to work. And you won't have to do all this stuff that we're doing, which is making parts and a lot of measuring and a lot of making sure that everything's perfect. But essentially, what we have and what we're working on right now for this front end, you've already seen all the stuff that we had just to get everything to just literally just to steer and fit properly. Then once we get the wheel installed on the axle, which when we use this Evol Technology Superbike triple clamp set, it does come with an axle, but you know, there's no way for that manufacturer to know the spacers that we're going to need, because every fork is a little different. You know, the wheels that we're running are going to be a variable. There's a lot of variables here, so we can't expect Evol Technology to always have the spacers that we need. I think they do have them for certain Superbike forks and certain spacers. Sorry for the interruption there. We had one of our delivery drivers picking up. So anyway, what I was saying is essentially because we can't expect the manufacturer of these parts to know specifications for whatever aftermarket wheel and fork and whatever else that we're running. We can't expect them to have these spacer specs, so it's up to us to take these measurements and provide that information to the manufacturer, and they'll make them. And Evol Technology will make these wheel spacers for us. Also, Fast Frank Racing is somebody that we have make a lot of our custom aluminum spacers. He does a great job with this kind of stuff. He doesn't make triple clamps and things like that, but he makes a lot of really trick aluminum parts and makes a really nice set of captive spacers. So we're actually going to use his spacers, and part of that is also just for time, because we also, moving on to some other things we're going to need, we've got Evol Technology manufacturing some other components we need to complete that. So once we get our wheel spacing set up, which is basically just, the goal is to center it in this fork. Right now we have just, you may see we have like some little shims in here. We have these various thickness precision shims, and we actually have an array of OZ wheel spacers for these Superbike spec front ends. And so we can, when we're doing a project like this, we have so many spacers and shims that we can usually get really close to where we need, and it allows us to mock things up. And the reason that we want to mock all that stuff up, we know exactly what we need, so we're basically just shimming everything to get the approximate spacer thickness to center this wheel. And then we have to determine our brake disc spacing. And what I mean by that is, for example, right now, if we were to mount one of our brake calipers, see if I can grab one and we'll show you this. So if we take this brake caliper here, get the pads out. All right, so if we take this brake caliper here, which is our World Superbike Spec Evo, and we try to mount this here, what we're gonna find, I don't know if you can really see this on the in the shot, but it doesn't line up. So in order to get this to even come close to lining up to this fork, we basically have to pull the caliper to where the back of the caliper is basically pressed into this disc here. You don't want that. This thing needs to be centered inside that slot in order for everything to function properly, there to be no brake drag and that kind of thing. So the way we correct this is that we now have to make a secondary spacer. There's actually a few options. I mean, really the best solution is to make a brand new brake disc carrier for this wheel that spaces this out. That's what we're going to do long term. Short term, however, that's a lot of work and a lot of design and cost, and we just don't have time to do that initially. So what we're going to do is make a spacer that goes behind this brake disc in between the original brake carrier and the disc on the wheel, and it just moves the brake disc out. It's usually a pretty marginal amount. In this case, just a couple of millimeters. And at that point, we'll have everything properly centered, and we'll have a front end that's put together properly using measurements, and then we check everything by mocking it all up. And same deal, we have a ton of precision shims that we can use with various 6mm and 8mm IDs, and so we can stack those, or in some cases just use a single one and mock it up just to make sure that our measurements check out. So that's how we do that. Moving on, we've got all that sorted, things are in production, and we should have everything to have this bike ideally ready for testing next week. The next thing, we have this beautiful carbon fiber ram air duct / fairing stay mounted, which we have our Bonamici dash protector. And I apologize if the sound goes in and out. We don't have a lapel mic yet, so when I move the camera away, it's gonna get quiet. Here you can see some of our buttons. This is Bike Sports Developments, of course. Really like these. They're, some people are probably going to think those are a little busy, and they are, but it's unfortunately just the way it has to be on this motorcycle because of the number of inputs and functions that the original switch pod has. So there's really no way around that. Over here you can see we've got our brake side rear set set up. It now has this IMA thumb brake master. We're going to use that because we're probably going to wind up using a handbrake on this or a thumb brake, and this is just a nice billet master cylinder regardless, but that's just going to make sense. Just on a side note, you can actually use this just as a conventional master just by putting a barb fitting and a banjo bolt here, and it's a really clean and super tidy billet master for not a lot of money. I think that piece is about 300 bucks. So super lightweight, really nicely made billet, and it's an Italian product, so it goes perfectly with this. So you kind of see what we're doing, and you can understand the process, and it's just an ongoing thing. It's amazing because we're getting a lot done, but we have so much more to do before this motorcycle is ready to be actually put on a racetrack. and we're trying to get this thing on track in about a week. Hopefully we can do that. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of work, and I'm sure we're going to find more things that we have to sort out as we work our way through. We haven't even really gotten to the rear end of the motorcycle properly yet. We're going to be changing that shock absorber, making some changes using that ride height tool that we brought out earlier, and we're going to need to achieve some ideal geometry. Based on some early measurements, it looks like we're going to have to modify whatever shock absorber we use. Initially, we're going to use an Ohlins TTX. We're going to test other stuff. Just like I mentioned, we're going to be testing Superbike forks. We're also going to test different shocks, and we'll give you guys some feedback on how each product works. And it'll be interesting to compare how they all come together on this motorcycle and affect performance. So next, we're going to get this TTX. I think we're going to get that on Monday, and we're going to have some spare parts to modify it. So we got to do all that. We'll get into that a bit once it gets here, but I think for now that's enough. We've covered quite a bit, and you can kind of see where we're going with this. It's going to be a real superbike. So thanks for watching. And once more, if you like these type of videos and you like what we're showing you and talking about, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And more importantly, if there's something you want us to cover, or if you want us to talk about anything on this motorcycle, or if there's anything you'd like to see us do to this bike, be sure to leave a comment about it, and we'll do our best to accommodate that for you. Thanks for watching.